privilege of introducing a gentleman that I just actually had an opportunity to meet, but I feel like I've known him for a while because he's just, and you'll see yourselves if you've not had an opportunity to hear him speak, he's just got a heart, just a very warm personality and someone, you know, you wouldn't mind going after work and grabbing a bottle of tea with, right? It's funny, and as he was being interviewed just a moment ago, he was asked, you know, okay, you've written a book, when are you going to write your next one? And so I started thinking, I was like, okay, books are a lot like babies, right? No sooner you have one, somebody's asking me, when's your next one coming? So I know you all are going to thoroughly enjoy hearing from Seth, and I don't want to take up much of his time, so I'm not going to go into a lengthy introduction of him, because you're going to have an opportunity to hear a lot about him, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy what he has to share with you. So I just encourage you to just sort of open up your minds, open up your dream space, and live vicariously through him and through his journey over the next few moments. And so without further ado, I just want to bring up Mr. Seth Goldman.
Thank you. Good morning. And for those of you who are looking over your neck, feel free to just turn your chair around. I'm going to be talking for a while. I don't want you to get a sore neck here. It's better for your posture. So first of all, isn't it nice to actually have our economy back to work? I got to tell you, it's been a little surreal. Like you literally, in this place, when government's closed, business is closed, and it's been a very odd feeling. The idea that you could actually do that with economy, basically turn it off for two. You can't do that with a business, as we know. At least we don't get paid if we turn our businesses off for 2 weeks. So it's nice to see it back in action. And amidst all of that craziness, it's hard to think there was any sort of uplifting moment, but I do want to share one with you. And this was when President Obama was signing the order, just when the furlough went in, that to make sure the military was deemed as emergency or certainly essential. He signed that bill, and this is the picture of him in that signing. And if you look over on his desk, now I promise you the picture wasn't doctored. If the picture was doctored, the label would have been out. But that's the Resolute desk, and as my wife pointed out, he doesn't have a coaster there. But actually, it's kind of interesting. By the way, that's Green Dragon tea. That's the one here. But, it's interesting. You don't often see presidents with brands. Just think about that, right? When was the last time you ever saw a president with either Coke or Pepsi or just any brand? They're very meticulous about not doing that. So I actually think somebody sort of said, we're going to let this happen. It was not a totally accidental picture. But anyway, just a fun little light moment. So I want to talk to you today about how we've taken Honest Tea to scale. Not just, there's certainly the story, our 10 years of, not in the wilderness, but our struggle to sort of get to a place where we had the opportunity to get to a national platform. And then the more recent developments, basically, as you may know, we sold to Coca-Cola in 2011. And so then how we've taken this entrepreneurial brand that started out of my house and how we are bringing it to a national scale. Before we do that, though, I want to share with you a little bit about where we're coming from, and in this case, literally, where our tea leaves come from. And so I'm going to show you a short video from a sourcing trip that I took to India just last year, and it was two very different tea gardens. One is the leading fair trade tea garden in the world. It's one of the most advanced. The school they have is actually the envy of surrounding communities. And then in the same trip, a visit to a very different kind of supplier. It's a product called Tulsi. Has anyone heard of Tulsi? A few. So Tulsi is actually a basil leaf. It's called holy basil in India. And you'll see in this community, their economic needs are so much more basic. They are looking for access to power. Power only comes on 3 hours a day. And so, we were visiting there, and all of a sudden the power came on. And, it didn't matter if there was a scheduled visit. It's like, okay, when the power comes on, that starts the water pumps working. It's time to get to work. And so you'll see how we interact with that community. So I'm going to play this video for you. At Honest Tea, we always like to stay connected to our ingredients and the communities that produce them. So earlier this year, I traveled to Tamil Nadu in India to visit the Korakunda Tea Garden, 6,400 feet above sea level. Here's the 2 leaves. 1, 2, and the bud. Her basket is much more full than mine. Once the tea leaves have been picked, they're weighed and then shipped off to the processing center. 2/3 of the land is still rainforest, which helps explain why there's so much biodiversity. The landscapes in Korakunda are amazing, but the most cherished asset in the community is the school that's supported by fair trade funds. In fact, the school is so impressive that families from surrounding communities try to get their children into the school, even if the parents don't work in the tea garden. We were warmly welcomed and even treated to a local version of the Hokey Pokey. Just for fun, I brought along Stomp Rockets, a toy my sons and I have always enjoyed, and we even managed to get one stuck on the roof. We also visited Bengaluru to learn more about the Tulsi plant. The first farm we visited was 4 acres owned by a farmer and his wife. The power only comes on for 3 hours a day in Bengaluru, and it just so happened that when we were there, the power came on. So when the water pump started, it was time to plant the Tulsi seedlings. It took a few tries to learn how to plant the seedlings the right way. Cows roam freely in India, so you have to watch your step. Tulsi is also known as holy basil, and the herb is used in Hindu ceremonies, as seen here with this Tulsi garland. During the visit, our supplier and I cut the ribbon on a new Tulsi drying facility. The farmers can sell freshly picked Tulsi for about 14 cents a kilo. Not that much. When they sell it as garlands, they can sell it for 36 cents a kilo. But when they can sell Tulsi as a dried ingredient, they can sell it for $3.70 a kilo. The new drying shed allows the community to capture more than 20 times the value of freshly picked Tulsi. I also met with several dozen local farmers and explained why organics is important to American consumers and a great market for them. The opportunity to meet these farmers and learn more about the spiritual role Tulsi plays in their lives made me even more excited to share this wondrous plant with our consumers. We just last month, that same, the manager of the cooperative was in Baltimore for the Natural Product Show, the national expo that happens every year. And he told me, really in front of a group of people, I talked to him about the visit, but when I was there, their capacity, this community was growing 10,000 kilos of Tulsi a year. And after the visit, partially because of the facility we set up and partially because of the sales pitch I gave them about the fact that consumers are really looking for organic products, that we're excited about this ingredient, they've increased their capacity now to 100,000 kilos, sorry. So it's really a dramatic change. And when you can help a community capture that value, I mean, at 14 cents a kilo, that's just not sustainable. When you can take it to over $3, all of a sudden, all right, we can make a living on this. We can actually start to invest in our community and do things. So it's been a really exciting to see, and you'll certainly, that's one of the reasons I'm very excited about that particular ingredient and sourcing it. Okay, so from India now to Bethesda. And if 16 years ago you had told me I would be running an organization, maybe I'd be living in the Washington, D.C. area, running an organization that was helping to eliminate billions of calories from the American diet and helping to spread organic agriculture and helping to spread fair trade labor standards in the developing world, I say, oh, that's great. I've always considered myself an activist. That's just what I'd love to do. What's the nonprofit I'm running, or what's the government agency I'm affiliated with? I would never have guessed that it would be a beverage company, let alone a beverage company owned by the Coca-Cola company. Let alone one that delivered a 26 times return to its original investors. So honesty has been quite a journey for me. It continues to be an unexpected, a journey with some unexpected twists and turns, and it's also what we call a mission-driven enterprise. I don't really believe in the term socially responsible business, because to me that suggests you've reached a destination, that you are one, versus for us, social responsibility it's a journey. It's that idea that you're continuing to strive toward further reducing your footprint, toward improving your impact on your consumers. And so that's the mission, that's the journey we're engaged in. And it actually started in 1995, and you'll see I'm going to start showing you some pictures. These are the color version from the book that has just come out. And it is a comic book. It is a business book that is a comic book. And This particular scene is from the classroom. I was at the Yale School of Management with my professor, Barry, who's up in the top corner there. And we were doing a case study of the beverage industry. And Barry had asked, in the beverage industry, there's so many options. And as we all know, you walk down the beverage aisle, and it's lined with hundreds of choices. He said, is there anything missing? And my hand went up. That's supposed to be me in the bottom corner there. And I said, yeah, there's all these drinks with 100, this was 1995, all these drinks with 100 calories per serving, and all these drinks with no calories, either artificial ingredients or water. There's nothing with 1 or 2 teaspoons. And if I make iced tea at home, I don't put 5 teaspoons, 6 teaspoons in per serving. I put in maybe 1. Why isn't there a drink like that? And I'm thirsty. I'm ready to do something about it. And I wasn't ready to do something about it that time, but I thought there was an opportunity. And so I moved down to Bethesda with my family. We had 2 young sons at the time. And I went for a run in Central Park after giving a presentation in New York. And after the run, I went to the beverage shelf. I was with a friend of mine from college. I said, there's nothing here. He said, what do you mean there's nothing here? There's plenty of drinks. I said, there's nothing here that's going to quench my thirst. And I said, I'm ready to do something about it. And so I reached out to Barry, and Barry had just come back from India, where he'd been studying the tea industry, and he had a few good key insights. So one insight was that the tea leaves that are used to make bottled tea in the United States is really the dregs. It was sort of after all the auctions and all the people had bought the quality tea, sort of what was left over was kind of processed into a concentrate or powder, and that was what bottled tea companies used in the United States to make iced tea. And he said, if you could make a bottled tea with tea that would be dramatically higher quality, and it would still only cost you pennies a bottle. So that was one insight. The other insight was he had come up with the name Honest Tea. And that, of course, was where, when he told me that, I kind of felt like the clouds parted, and all right, that's it. That clinches it. I'm going to do this. And so we registered the name Honest Tea. We sent in filed for the trademark, and we filed for it in 2 different ways. So we registered Honest Tea, the way it shows up on the bottle today. But we also registered it as HONESTEA. And within a few weeks of that application, we actually heard back from Nestee's trademark lawyer, who said, well, you're trying to market a product called Ho Nestea. I said, well, we hadn't intended to do that. And I'm not exactly sure what kind of business that would be, but we're going to withdraw the application for Ho Nestea if you let us keep Honest Tea. And they agreed, and we agreed, and so we got the rights to the name Honest Tea.
Did you know that you can make a donation to support our educational, training, and community programs just by dining out for your favorite restaurants? Through the Good Dining program, participating restaurants will donate in your name up to 6% of your bill to Montgomery Community Television, Montgomery Community Media. There are nearly 300 participating restaurants in the Montgomery County area. You can make a difference today by registering at goodsearch.com/good dining. Please select Montgomery Community Television as your charity when you register. Thank you.
Oh, sweetheart. Can I give you a hand?
No thanks, Dad. I got it.
Okay. I'm gonna go fix the lamp in your room.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
Learning how to kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
I've read a lot of business books, or I really should say I've tried to read a lot of business books, and I just haven't found them captivating. They really haven't drawn me in, and especially books around green business. Those are the ones I really want to be inspired by, and I was kind of feeling left uninspired. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to, at the time that I was thinking we needed to tell the Honest Tea story, my oldest son was bringing home a lot of comic books, and they really drew me in. And I said, wait a minute, we could take our business story and tell it in a very different way and make it more accessible. And so that was the idea of making the business book as a comic book. A direct audience is entrepreneurs, anybody who's in the middle of or thinking about building a business. It's a very hands-on guide to doing it. But in addition, there's a whole group of people who are just thinking about if they have an idea, they want to sort of, how do you take an idea from an idea into action? How do you make it into something, whether it's a nonprofit, for-profit? And so it's really that wider audience. So I left my job at Calvert, and Barry came down to Bethesda. We brewed 5 thermoses of tea, and I got an appointment at the Rockville Whole Foods office, which is, as you probably know, just nearby, over on Executive Boulevard. And had the 5 thermoses of tea. We got an empty Snapple bottle that we pasted a label on each side, and I brought it to the buyer, and I said, we want to sell this in your store. And to my great delight and horror, the buyer said, great, we'll take 15,000 bottles. And there was this awkward pause. Be careful what you wish for. I said, well, that's great. I think. I didn't say I think, but I said, that's great. And then the buyer said, well, and I'd love to get all of the product delivered to us for free. And once we sell through it, we'll pay you for the next order. And that actually is fairly standard. But I was so green, I didn't understand that. And I said, well, that sounds almost really good. I said, the whole company is me and the thermoses. I didn't tell them the thermoses were on loan, so it was really me and an empty Snapple bottle. I said, I really need you to pay for every bottle because I just can't give anything away. And that was true. I mean, I was being honest. And so he said, okay. And we delivered made our first delivery to Whole Foods on Memorial Day weekend. And we were in business. And that whole first year, our focus was just to succeed in those stores. And we gave out more samples in those stores than we sold. But by the end of the summer, we're the best-selling tea in the 17 Whole Foods stores. And that was kind of our launch pad. From there, we were able to start growing. And I'll share with you just an interesting side note since we're sort of, with local friends here. The day that we were brewing tea in my kitchen, the day Barry was in my kitchen, my wife walked in right in the middle of it all. And of course, she walks in and there's, thermoses everywhere and tea leaves staining the counters. But she had a very concerned look on her face, and it was kind of like, I'm not even worried about what I'm seeing here. Our middle son, she walked in with our middle son, who was 4 years old. They had just gone to the doctor, and he had been prescribed or diagnosed with a coarctation of his aorta. It means his aorta, the main artery in his body, was basically closed off, and he was going to need major surgery. So as entrepreneurs, I'm sure we all go through this. You've got a business, you're trying to build something, and life happens. And so at the same time that I was sort of getting ready for what turned out to be one of the biggest days in Honesty's short history, life happened. And that continues to be a theme, and it's something we deal with in the book as well. There's no way around it. I'll also share with you, so this just to give you because I know a lot of you start your businesses out of your home. And we highlighted in the book, if there's one significant, you can sort of say one significant computer stroke, it would be a pen stroke if we were talking in old parlance, but the most significant thing I did in that first week was I deleted the solitaire program from my home computer. I was like, not that I played a lot of solitaire, but it's like, all right, we're not going to have time to play solitaire if we're serious about the business. So anyway, we were up and running, and we were in business, and we started to grow. And we had a really neat idea for a business, but we had a few challenges. We had no money, we had no distribution, no product, and no marketing budget. But other than that, we had a solid business idea. So how do we deal with all those things? Well, as you might guess, the money certainly was a challenge. And in the beginning, we raised the money from the only folks who would write a check and be willing to lose it. In this case, it was my parents, Barry's parents, my sister, some of Barry's college roommates, and ourselves, of course. We put money in as well. And that was $500,000 that enabled us to get up and running. And then over the next 10 years, we raised $10 million from angel investors. We really stuck to that path. And for us, it was really important. We learned quickly that while there were other folks who had a lot more money that were willing to put money in, they didn't necessarily see the business and the opportunity the same way. And I'll give you a few examples, some of which you'll be able to appreciate. So we had a bunch of private equity investors who said, this brand's got real potential. I had one guy come down from Boston and he says, you've got this caffeine delivery device you're selling, and that's going to be just like Starbucks. That's a great, you're going to be able to basically sell a drug, a legalized drug to people. Like, oh my gosh, I never thought of the business that way. And he says, and while you're at it, you've got this, this natural healthy brand. You don't really want Bethesda on your back of your label. What you could do is set up a P.O. box in Vermont or New Hampshire, and that would be a way to sort of get that healthy cachet. And I said, well, number one, that's not honest. But number two, why shouldn't Bethesda be a place where an entrepreneurial, mission-driven business can grow and thrive? And so obviously we kept that on the, not only do we keep it on the label, now if you'll see with our plastic bottle, we actually have it inscribed on the bottom where it says, established Bethesda, Maryland, 1998. So we are certainly keeping our Bethesda pride, our local pride and roots. But that was the kind of advice we were getting from those type of folks. And so what we realized is that if we really wanted to control the brand, we were going to need to raise money from people who were supportive of our vision. And so after that first summer, we succeeded, as I said, in Whole Foods. We needed to get now to expand beyond the Mid-Atlantic. And so we raised money from all kinds of other people. More friends came in, but also fans of the product, people who liked our drinks and just wanted to see us stay in business. And so that group up in the top corner came in. We had some employees who had friends. We had a few angel groups that I spoke with. And then we did some interesting things with our partners. Our public relations firm took some of their payment in equity. We had our label designer. We're still thankful to the label designer who helped us come up with this idea of a T being a sort of a keyhole to see what we're selling. But we put together our deal with him in an interesting way. We said, we don't really have, this was in the beginning, we don't really have much money to pay you, but we want you to take the bet with us. So we'll pay you $2,500 to do the work, which, as you know, is not much for a high, quality label designer. But then, if we sell the bottles, if it goes out and sells, we're going to give you a half penny for every bottle for the first 60 million bottles. So he made $30,000, which he converted to equity, and when he cashed out, he made over $100,000. So he took the bet with us, and he did well, but he also took a risk, and so he's somebody we're still very friendly with. So that was how we raised the money. Okay, so we got money now. Now what do we do? Well, one good thing was that we were really clicking with our consumers, and this was a voicemail we got from a consumer one morning. She said, I went to your website last night. I thought, oh my gosh, I would beg to work at this company. I would move so I could work for your company. How responsible are you? That is just so everything. I wish you did everything. I wish you did my banking. I wish you were my neighbors. Thank you so much. Asking, you don't really hear people often say, I wish you were my banker, but we're doing my banking. But that was the kind of connection. And in the class, sort of the customer for life, we had this guy out in California. This was a real Honest Tea tattoo. So people really got into the brand. And so then our challenge was, okay, we've got people who want it. And let's be clear, Honest Tea was not for everybody, and it still isn't, right? If you want a sweet tea, we're not your brand. And fact is, if you want a sweet tea, you got plenty of choices. But if you want a less sweet tea, back in 1998 and 2000, we had a monopoly. We were the only product. And so what happened was people would go to stores, and when they didn't see Honest Tea, they wouldn't just say, oh, well, I'm going to go buy a tea that's 5 times sweeter. They'd go to the grocery manager and say, I need to have my Honest Tea. And it really helped us because we were so small, we didn't have the ability to drive our own sales. And we got our consumers on board, and that was really helpful. And so then our challenge was, okay, we've got some consumers who like the product, but how are we going to distribute it? Because we got to Whole Foods through the warehouse. Getting anywhere else, though, was challenging. And so we went to beverage distributors, the folks who distributed Snapple in Arizona, and we were told no in just about every way. So some would say it's not sweet enough. Others would say it's too expensive. Some said it tastes like grass. Some would say the label isn't flashy enough. And I know this sounds surreal, but we had a major distributor in a major city tell us, well, we need to make $5 a case. And I said, well, how big are your cases? Well, normally he says, with your case, we only make $3.50. I said, but our case is 12 bottles, and you're making $5 on a 24-pack. So you're really making $7 a case with us. So no, we need to make $5 a case. I was like, I felt like I was speaking a different language, and it turns out I was. But so anyway, whatever it was, we were running into those barriers. And so because we weren't able to work with the beverage distributors, we had to find alternative ways to get to the stores. And we developed what we called a network of C distributors. I wish that C was a description of their quality. In fact, they were really D-. We called them C distributors because they all just happened to start out with the letter C. What I mean, let me give you some examples. So we went to Bradley Food and Beverage, the local store in Bethesda, and we said, we'd love to have you carry the product. And I was making the deliveries myself. And he says, it's just kind of, we'd rather get our deliveries brought in sort of, in the back through the same kind of distributor. And you're here in your Saturn station wagon. It just doesn't look as professional as we'd like. So why don't you talk to our cheese distributor? And sure enough, we started working with a cheese distributor that went to a bunch of the gourmet stores. And then I went to Bethesda Bagels and talked to Steve. And I said, he said, I like the product, but we don't work with a cheese distributor. Why don't you talk to my corned beef distributor? And sure enough, we started getting to the corned beef distributors to get to the delis. And then we went to Chevy Chase Supermarket and spoke to Jason and Kevin there. And they said, well, we don't work with those guys, but we've got a really good charcoal distributor who can carry your product. And so eventually we started taking up shelf space through this patchwork. And it was very hard to manage, but in its own way, it was working. And now, since we were selling and taking up shelf space, the beverage distributors started returning our calls. And we got our first real beverage distributors up and running around 2000, and then it grew. But beverage distributors are challenging people to deal with. They literally they're very territorial. That's their job. I mean, they go every day and fight for shelf space. Because the beverage aisle is kind of up for grabs. You go to a supermarket, and if Raisin Bran sells out, if Kellogg's Raisin Bran sells out, the next day that Kellogg's Raisin Bran is going to be in the exact same space as planogrammed. Beverages are a lot more freeform, and you go to Bradley Food and Beverage. If Honest Tea's sold out, another beverage distributor is going to try to take that space with a different product. And so I was trying to think how to illustrate what it's like to work with these guys. And I think the best way to do it is I've got a voicemail I'm going to play for you that one of our distributors left for one of our sales reps. And I apologize in advance. It's a little coarse, but I think it's a good way to illustrate just sort of what it's like to work with these folks. So let me play that for you here.
Yo, Mike, this is Louie from Twisted Distributors. Look, all the things that you up, if you don't handle that that works for you, bro, you could take your Honest Tea and you could stick it up Dan Cavanaugh's big. You understand what I'm saying? I'm telling you, your Honest Tea. And
you get the idea, but
yesterday,
the point is, they're tough folks to deal with. And if you think about creating a national map, sorry, you still going. A national map with that, it's like, all right, this is tough. So what happened was we were approached by several international food and beverage companies, and we realized we really needed to work with one to get this coverage, because we were getting also approached by national chains like Safeway. They came to us and said, we like your product, we see how it's growing in natural foods, and we know that natural foods is where the growth is. We want it in our stores. And I said, well, we can cover the Mid-Atlantic, we can cover California. They said, what about Chicago? What about Texas? And I said, we don't have distribution there yet. I said, well, when you do, let us know, we'll take your product on. And that was going to be our barrier to getting national scale. So we were approached by many companies, and for us, the best fit seemed to be with the Coca-Cola Company. And I want to share with you a bit about their point of view, and I'll share why we partnered with Coca-Cola. This was a slide that Coca-Cola's management team presented to their board in making the recommendation to invest in Honest Tea. This was back in fall of 2007. And they said, if you look at the mega trends, not the fads, but where is society headed? They're moving more towards health and wellness, environmental consciousness, and social responsibility. And that little white triangle, that little area where they all overlap, that's going to be, that's a space where a business can make decisions where they really integrate all of those priorities at the same time. And although that space is small in 2007, if we look out to 2012 or 2013, the standard for doing business will be when a company can act with that kind of mindset. And that's what Honest Tea is doing. It's not just a tea brand, it's not just an organic brand, it's not just a fair trade brand. It's a brand that's really looking at the way it operates in a different way. And that's what the investment will be about. And from our perspective, Coke wasn't, although they would have bought the company if we had agreed to it. They were open to not buying it. We said we don't want to sell, but we do want an investment, and we want you to help us grow this business to scale. So Coke bought 40% of the company in 2008, with the option to buy the rest of the company in 2011. And we still keep the company based in Bethesda. And the good part about the way we designed that structure was that when they had the option to buy it in 2011, we both agreed the structure was working. We said, hey, this works. Our management team is able to execute and grow. We still like what we're doing. We're still relevant to the brand. This isn't a brand we can just turn over to Coca-Cola and let them do whatever they want with it. And so we kept the structure intact. And in fact, they even, I kept my equity in the company as well. So it was really a way to preserve that entrepreneurial team.
Did you know that you can make a donation to support our educational training and community programs when you go shopping online? Through the Good Shopping program, participating stores will make a donation in your name to Montgomery Community Television, Montgomery Community Media. There are over 2,400 participating online retailers. You can make a difference today by registering at goodsearch.com/choose cause. Please enter Montgomery Community Television as your charity when you register. Thank you.
Turning a 20-foot wall into a canvas takes vision. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Because we were thirsty, we felt like there was something missing, and there was a chance to make the product, that we were thirsty for. So it's really nice to hear when other people feel the same way. So I never get tired of that. We're growing. I'm still running the company, and we're growing now at a much bigger, to a much larger scale than we were. So there's all kinds of new challenges, new distribution opportunities. We're actually in conversations now with several national restaurant chains. And so that, to me, is part of the next step of how do we take this business from a small Bethesda kitchen to national scale. So Coke came in, and now how do we scale the business? And I want to share with you all the different ways we had to do that. So first of all, one of the things that's important to keep in mind, while this puts us in a gray space, right? Because if we partner with if you get a local organic fair trade company partnering with a multinational, there's going to be some gray areas, right? We don't always share the same mindset about ingredients, about our relationship to health and nutrition and the environment. And so one of the things that we found is important is to have third-party objective standards. USDA organic is not just, that's something that's federally enforced, and we talk about that on our product. There's no gray area there. You either are organic or you're not. Same with fair trade. You have third-party certification. And then we also put out an annual mission report where we are accountable for our mission. We share our what we're doing. And then, of course, the nutrition piece, too. So for us, those are important ways to keep our brand and product, sort of still clearly identified. But how do we scale? The first thing is, what does it mean for distribution? When Coke invested in 2008, we were in 15,000 stores. Today, Honest Tea is in over 100,000 stores and still growing quickly. So our ability, we talk about how do we democratize organics. Well, that's been a key benefit of the partnership with Coca-Cola. And then what about production? Well, in the beginning, I told you the story. I said we had to figure out how to make that much tea. And Barry, in his own unique way, said, well, what's so hard? He was dipping a tea bag in a cup. He says, you take this and you multiply it times 10,000. That's how you do it. And in sort of from an academic perspective, that was accurate, but from an implementation perspective, it was messy. And here were some pictures from our first brewing session where we had these bags that we would dunk in the tank, and they'd break, and you'd get tea leaves spattered everywhere. And then when we finally made it to the bottle, you get sort of an inch and a half of tea sediment, which someone said, am I supposed to chew this? Or, well, no, yeah. And here's a picture from our first production run. Over here you see these bags. This was what we'd steeped in the tank. And on a good day, we can make about 18,000 bottles of tea. And then we evolved to this tea basket, and that one we could get about 60,000 bottles a day with about a half inch of tea sediment. So we were getting better, but still not really enough to get to scale. So the question was, well, what's Coca-Cola going to do? Because they want to get scale. And as skeptics at the time said, they're going to try to cheapen this. They're going to try to use a concentrate or a powder, just like I told you about how the tea what happens with the tea in India, they're going to try to find a shortcut. And instead, what we did is we set up these 2 multi-million-dollar tea brewing systems. This is our plant in Northampton. I'm up there on the 3rd floor of Massachusetts. And then this one's in California. Each of these can make 500,000 bottles a day with better consistency, better clarity, and better taste than we had back in our earlier days. So production, we were able to scale. Then what about innovation? Well, this is a true story. This was my middle son, the same one that had the coarctation, and my job was to make lunches when they were in middle school. And I was making one day, and he says, "Hey, Daddy, I know you sell healthy drinks to grown-ups, but why do you put really sugary drinks in my lunchbox?" And I looked, and the drink pouch that I was putting in his lunchbox had more calories per ounce than a can of soda. And that was, I know that sounds terrible. I'm embarrassed doing this true confessions here, but I would be willing to wager that if you were using drink pouches, they had the same amount of calories. You just didn't think about it. And I realized there was a tremendous opportunity to take the same equities of Honest Tea, organic, lower calorie, and put them in a kid's drink pouch. So we launched this line, Honest Kids, in 2006, and it's just exploded. It is now more than a third of our business and still growing very quickly. And what's interesting about it is, if you do market research, if you do a taste test, and the kid, if it's a kid tasting it, Honest Kids will lose every time. I guarantee it, because our product is not as sweet. And you ask a kid which tastes better, well, what is the kid going to say? That's how kids are trained. But if you put it in a kid's lunchbox, guess what that kid's going to drink? Because that's all they've got to drink. So on Monday, the kid will drink it and say, eh. By Tuesday, they'll drink it without thinking. By Friday, you've changed that child's palate. And all of a sudden, they're used to drinking drinks that are better for them. And so for us, well, how do you improve on that? Well, what we did this year is we took out all of the sugar that was added in, and we put in just organic OU kosher white grape juice. So calories it's still 40 calories. So nutritionally, it's the same. But if you think about who's the shopper is the parent. The parent picks up the box, and instead of reading as the first ingredient sugar, it's organic white grape juice. Big difference. And the product has continued to grow. Every year, I kind of tease my salespeople, because every year they say, well, we grew so much last year, I think we'll just sort of grow 5 or 10% this year, and then they're growing 40%. I said, you were sandbagging, but because we keep innovating with this one. And it was an undertaking to develop the supply chain to buy that much organic OU kosher white grape juice. We had to literally fly rabbis to Turkey and Argentina for the harvest. So that in its own was quite an undertaking. we ended up we own more than half the world's supply of organic OU kosher white grape juice because we did it. But it's a huge breakthrough for the product, and one that's obviously a lot has an appeal to the parent. So that's a great way and that was something really that Coca-Cola helped, not just to develop the supply chain for that, but even when you buy a contract for that much juice, you have to have cash, which we were able to have through their support. So that was how we grew innovation. And you'll see other innovations. We brought out larger bottles. We brought out Honest Fizz, a zero-calorie, naturally sweetened soda line. And then also this Honest Fresh Brew, which is what we've been presenting to a lot of national restaurant chains. So great opportunities to reach people in new ways, new occasions. And you'll see, this is what our growth curve looks like. This year we'll do over $100 million in sales. And all of our innovations have been driven by our mission. So first organic bottle tea, first fair trade bottle tea, the lighter weight packaging, Honest Kids, Honest Fizz, always thinking about how can we bring health, lower calorie to people in a way that is consistent with our mission. And at the same time, we've had our share of failures. We always, all of us, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. So a tea bag line that totally bombed. A line called Honest Coconova. Anybody here taste that one? No, that's why it didn't work. Yeah, that was a tough one. It was a brewed cacao product, just didn't work. So, we're not afraid to keep trying. So what about the marketing? Okay, we got a product, we're figuring out how to make it, we're figuring out how to innovate, but how are we reaching people? As I mentioned, that first year, we literally gave out samples by hand to people. Okay, and then even when we're in 15,000 stores, we're still going to be able to get to most of the stores. We get to 100,000 stores, we can't be there the same way. So how do we find ways to connect with consumers, to make them aware of our product, to help them understand our different approach to business? and do it on a national scale? Well, we can't do it all through sampling, though we still have, and we're really, I think, the only national beverage company that has a very highly developed field marketing team. So we do something else. And this was a social experiment that we've created called the National Honesty Index. And what we did is we set up racks of bottled tea all around the country, and we put up a sign that says it's $1 a bottle, honor system. And then we put up a lucite box, and we wanted to see how honest people were. So I'm going to show you what happened. Before I show you, though, for those of you who don't know the answer, what percent of people, what's your guess? How honest do you think people are? What percent of Americans would put money in the box when they think no one's looking? 85? 85? Okay. 95. All right, we're going to show you what happened. And in addition to watching the experiment, of course, think about this as a marketing innovation.
Just how honest are you in public if no one has their eyes on you, or at least you think they don't?
America's honesty has been put to the test using data gathered from experiments conducted in all 50 states.
The company behind Honest Tea set up an unmanned kiosk all across the states. Those kiosks offer drinks for $1 on the honor system.
All while secretly recording.
Did you pay $1 or are you a liar? A social experiment is actually underway.
Our company seeks to have this honest and direct relationship with our natural ingredients. And so we always wanted to test how much does the American consumer embody those same values.
Did you get a tea? No, I didn't. I don't have any cash, and I feel guilty not taking it.
In some situations, we actually had some people who tried to walk away with a rack of tea just to see what, if anyone would call them out, and no one did.
And in some states, your experiment really paid off. Alabama, Hawaii, 100% of the people paid.
Isn't that impressive?
We track observable characteristics such as male, female, if you have a hat on.
Someone put a $5 bill in and all they took was one drink, so they said they were extra honest.
There's some beauty of the honor system when it works, it really is.
The District of Columbia, they were the lowest. So those politicians in Washington, only 80% of them were honest.
To add insult to injury, our office is based very nearby. So I actually took the metro in, and when I got back to the metro, my bike had been stolen. So.
And you paid?
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone else took the tea and then sent you a letter with money inside later apologizing. So obviously there's remorse out there.
Based on the numbers from last year, it was really honest. It was mostly between 90 and 100% honest. And it kind of makes you feel good about society and, the way we're headed.
It's a fun experiment, and what's interesting about it, we've been doing it for 5 years in a row. So it's kind of not news. And yet, because we've been able to put a new twist on it this year, going to all 50 states, which, by the way, our team literally ended up driving the equivalent of driving around the world in order to cover all 50 states. But it's a nice, first of all, it is a feel-good story. I mean, we're not faking the results. Those are the results. I guess not feel-good for Washington, D.C., but everywhere. Everywhere else, and it is refreshing to know and to see that people are genuinely honest, as long as you have a good bike lock. And so for us, and if I think about what we would have to do to get Honest Tea talked about on the Anchorage, Alaska Evening News, at the Topeka, Kansas Evening News, I would really be at a loss, whereas this is a way for us to really localize the story. All right, let me try to put together some big ideas. So. First of all, what does it mean? Well, when Coke invested in 2008, the year before had bought about 800,000 pounds of organic ingredients. This year we'll buy over 5 million pounds of organic ingredients. So we really start to change the way decision makers in these countries think about are we going to be organic or not? Are we going to be fair trade or not? Because we're helping to drive demand. And so what about Honest Tea's bigger impact? What about our model? Well, the book for us is a really important way for me to be able to share the message, to share the approach to business. And we made it as a comic book for a few reasons. Number one, I was trying to read regular business books, in particular green business books, and I was uninspired. I just found them kind of preachy and not inspiring. And if this is how we're going to change business, we've got to not just make it inspiring to those of us, in the area. We want to bring in new people and make it accessible. And so at the time, my oldest son was at BCC. He had just gotten into college, so he had officially entered his senior slump, which meant he was bringing home comic books instead of doing his homework. And I was supposed to go tell him, no, you got to go do your homework, and you got to. And I'd be up there, my wife would walk in and find us both reading comic books together. And I said, well, if there's something about a visual that makes it so much more engaging, let's think about how to tell a business story that way. And the fact is, so many entrepreneurs are either dyslexic or ADD or just, look at things not the traditional way. And so the book has got a great response. It's been in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller lists, and it's just made it a very accessible story. So we are selling copies of the book today, and I hope if you're an entrepreneur, I hope you get the chance to get one, because I've talked to so many who have said, oh my gosh, this was like, it was such a consolation for me to read it and understand how perilously close your business was to going out of business most of the time. It's nice to know it was hard for other people, and other people felt, wow, it was so inspiring. So it is certainly for entrepreneurs, but it's also for people thinking about if anyone who's passionate about something and wants to understand what it takes to move from idea to execution. The other way, of course, that we've been involved in spreading what we're trying to do is through Bethesda Green. It's a nonprofit that I co-founded with George Leventhal, I guess 5 years ago now. And initially it started with us just putting in recycling bins in downtown Bethesda. And then as we were growing, it was actually Chevy Chase Bank that wanted to be a supporter, but they I didn't know at the time, they were actually being bought by Capital One, so they couldn't write us a check. But they said, well, we have some office space above our branch at Cordell and Woodmont. Is that useful? And I said, well, it's great for our executive director, but that's just one person. What if we use that space to make a green business incubator? And now we have 16 eco-entrepreneurs launching their green businesses out of Bethesda Green space. So that's been really exciting to see how that's grown. And then I've also been on the board of an organic baby food company called Happy Family, and just recently joined the board of a vegetarian protein company called Beyond Meat. So finding additional ways to continue to spread and support this approach to business. So I want to share with you all, since we're in a group with a group of entrepreneurs, I want to share with you, it says our 5 rules for the road. Of course, since we're not particularly rule bound, we have 6. And these are some of there's more of these in the book, but here's some of my favorites. So one is build something you believe in. That's the first step to building a great brand. The key with a business, especially where if you're starting it, by yourself, you've got to be not just a little bit of a believer in it. You have to feel it, not just with every sort of, bone in your body. It's got to be every nose hair, every hand hair, every elbow hair. You've got to feel it. And so because the challenges are so big, you've got to really be bound to it. Number 2, don't aim for 10% improvement. Make it radically better and different. So if we had come out and said, okay, everyone's at 100 calories for bottled iced tea, we're going to bring out a product with 90 calories per bottle, that's not powerful enough. And if somebody somebody went to the shelf and Honest Tea wasn't there, well, 90 versus 100, I can go back to my 100. But if it's 100 versus 17 calories, you can't go back. And our customers gave it, and as I said, our product was imperfect in the beginning, but our customers gave us a lot of a big cushion, a big sort of license, because we were doing something so different. Number 3, build up reserves of money and energy for bad luck and mistakes. You've got to make sure you have your own energy to build this business, because it's going to drain you. There's no question. And so you've got to be able to you got to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and make sure all of those things are strong, so to keep your core strong. Number 4, don't never ever give up control until you sell. So for us, it was really important not to take in that money from those investors who wanted to take a different path. And the reason we were able to create the deal we wanted with Coca-Cola was because we had control of the company. Number 5, figure out how to achieve your goals on a tiny budget and then cut that number in half. So we might have had a national budget to say, we're going to do a national advertising campaign, and we're going to try to get on everyone, in every state. And then we would have said, okay, well, if that's the goal, Let's find another way to get on every TV station in every state with a quarter of the money, okay, because we never had that much money to do it anyway. And then finally, number 6, which fits here, don't pay too much attention to the rules as long as you're not breaking the law. So no one's saying you should break the law, but don't just because there's ways things are done, don't follow that rule. Now let me just give you some big picture thoughts, and then I'd love to open up for questions. So these are 2 Chinese proverbs. One is, if we don't change the direction we are headed, we will end up where we are going. Now, it's obvious, right? But actually, think about where we're going. It's not a good place. And I'm an optimist. You wouldn't start a business if you weren't an optimist. But the United Nations recently ranked the average life expectancy of all 200 countries in the world. And before I tell you where the United States ended up, just keep in mind, we're the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We have more advanced knowledge of science and medicine than any civilization in history has ever had. But we're not number 1, and we're not number 2. The United States is number 40 in average life expectancy. So what does that say about our society, about our diets, our lifestyles, our relationship to the natural world, our relationship to each other? It means we're in the wrong direction. And I wish I could tell you the federal government's going to help us get in a better direction. I don't think that's going to happen. Nonprofits are important, and they play a role. I don't think large corporations are going to lead us in a different direction. It's really the entrepreneurs who are going to do that. Entrepreneurs who can have a different vision of how we live, of how we interact with nature. And they start small. They start with ideas. And when those ideas succeed in the marketplace, then big companies will buy in. But they will, because it's a different future, and it can be a better future, and it can certainly be a profitable business idea. But it's got to start with the entrepreneurs. And that's why I always love to both spread this message and connect with communities and people who take this seriously. And I will be the first to say this is not easy work. I still live with the challenge of being an entrepreneur. And one of my favorite scenes in the book is within the first month of us making our delivery to Whole Foods, I was at a family picnic having a piece of pizza, and I felt something crunchy in my mouth. I said, well, there's not supposed to be anything crunchy in pizza. And it was my tooth that had cracked. So I went to the dentist, and she said, yeah, no, you're grinding your teeth at night. Are you under any stress? I said, yeah, I guess you could say that. So well, you got 2 options. You can do the deep breathing and turn the lights low and listen to soothing music before you go to bed. Or you can get a mouth guard. And your teeth will still grind, but there'll be that padding between them. I said, give me the night guard, because I don't see myself, being able to have a soothing sleep. And I still wear a night guard, but the work is still inspiring. It's still challenging, and it's still there's still skeptics. There's still people who say this can't be done. You can't have a small entrepreneurial, mission-driven brand be part of a large corporation. Just as there were people who said you can't take a less sweet drink and compete against the sweeter drinks. You can't have, in an industry where the goal is to have the cheapest ingredients, you can't try to make your ingredients more expensive. And there's always going to be people who are going to say it can't be done. And so I'm going to share with you in closing this proverb. This is on the wall of Honesty's office in Bethesda. Those who say it cannot be done should not interrupt the people doing it. Thank you very much.
It was incredible. I was blown away with it. His personality, his passion, and how down to earth. And then I realized that someone like him can be humble and want to give back to community. It was incredible. I also teach entrepreneurship, and I'm the director of entrepreneurship program. 5 of my students are here with me today, and I will share the story with them. There are so many great lessons to take from his speech. I'm just speechless.
I was supposed to go to the lunch last Friday.
I was very inspired by the talk. It's such a great honor to actually meet him. He's such a kind and honest person. And the fact that he actually started so small and made his business on such an international scale is amazing.
I think it's fantastic and inspiring. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a book. They ran out of books, but I gave them my card to give me a book later.
I sure learned a lot, and I work with small business, and I often see small business having the same issues that he had starting their own business. I think this is a great story to share.
I thought it was phenomenal. It was great to see Seth talk about a lot of things that I've read about in the past. I've always followed the company. I've been an entrepreneur for my last 25 years, and so when you see other entrepreneurs make it as successful and keep to their values as that, it's inspiring. And then to just hear them talk about it and just hear some of the stories about the beginning reminds me a lot of the kind of the things that happened to my business early on and some of the funny anecdotes. It was just a very inspiring and heartwarming talk.
The presentation was, it was funny. It kept everybody, interested. I really enjoyed Seth's sort of perspective on how he grew the business, how he started the business, where it's going. It really resonated with me because I think we share a lot of the same passions as far as ingredients and sustainability and sort of like the food world. I thought it was wonderful.
And you bought a book.
I bought a book, yep, and it's signed.
It's nice to see that kind of entrepreneurial spirit is located here. You don't always know in your back door that, there's things like that going on. I thought it was great. I know that the money's probably going somewhere that will support something else. He's very, very ultra, he has a really good soul, and his money goes out to other people, and it's not all about building something for himself. It's for building for other people and for the world, and that strikes home. So obviously the proceeds from the books will help him as well as other people. So it was something you did. You didn't leave without buying. So.
Well, we love being in Montgomery County. It is our home, and it's funny, when we started the company, we had one of these outside investors come in and say, well, you got this natural, healthy brand. You really don't need to be based in Bethesda. You should set up a P.O. box in Vermont or New Hampshire. And I said, well, number one, that's not honest. But number two, why can't Bethesda be the kind of place that really is where a mission-driven business can thrive? And it has been.
On the bed. It's not here. Check the dining room. No. The upstairs closet.
Moms everywhere are finding ways to keep kids active and healthy. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov.